All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining our very first Tanaduk Garden Talk. I am Liz Sung. I will be moderating today's talk. I'm sure maybe for some of you, it's the first time you're hearing about this Tanaduk Garden Project. So I'm happy to just give you a very brief introduction. Initially, it started out as a fundraising project we launched on Dr. Nida's birthday back in October to help raise funds for his new center, Yuthok Arche. But in the last few months, the Tanaduk Garden Project has evolved. And maybe many of you know, for many years, it's been one of Dr. Nida's dreams to have Medicine Buddha Tanaduks all over the world that are open to the public and available for anyone to discover, visit, and just have a moment away from our busy modern lives to reconnect with nature and absorb the healing and balancing energies of the Tanaduk and come back to our organic state of being. So, this dream of a network of healing gardens and his life mission to spread the teachings of Sowa Rigpa have combined to give a new direction for this Tanaduk Garden Project as a new initiative to help develop and support garden communities internationally, connect growers, healers, and traders through a reliable network to obtain herbal substances, and also just serve as an educational resource. So, Dr. Nina's hope is that people are inspired and motivated to create their own version of a Tanaduk, regardless of whether you live in an apartment in the city or you have a small backyard or a huge plot of land. It's always possible and beneficial to invite more personal connection to nature into our lives. So, anytime we are overstressed, simply spending time in nature helps to pacify, energize, and balance as needed. So, this is our first talk that we've organized, and we've invited our dear friend Edward Coughlin, who has been a student of Dr. Nida's for years. And based in Florida, he has been practicing traditional Chinese medicine for 30 years, over 30 years.
Mhm.
And he was the first acupuncturist in Florida to work in hospitals. He has treated hundreds of patients through his self-owned practice in Florida called Jade Lotus. He is a certified sort of a practitioner, a master herbalist with, oh gosh, like 700 herbs and formulas in his office over there. And so, if there's anything you ever need, he is your guy. And currently, he is teaching the herbal and materia medica sections for the Sowa Rigpa Institute professional programs. So we are in good hands today. So today, Edward will take us on a tour of the Medicine Buddha's Tanaduk, giving us a comprehensive overview of its symbolism and meaning, and the medicinal plants referenced in the root tantra of the Jushi, the four medical tantras of Tibetan medicine. And Ed, when you are ready, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. My name is Edward Coughlin, and she gave me a pretty good introduction, but I'm a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, Tibetan Sowa Rigpa practitioner, and I also practice eclectic Western herbal medicine for the last 30 years. And I have a clinic in Miramar Beach, Florida. And like she said, I teach the herbal and materia medica sections of the Sowa Rigpa Institute. And so today, what we're going to talk about is Tanaduk, or in Tanaduk is the Tibetan translation of the word Sudarsana. Sudarsana means beautiful to behold. And so Tanaduk is said to be beautiful to behold. And so here we have a picture of Tanaduk, and this is from a book called The Blue Beryl, which is a book written by the regent of the fifth Dalai Lama. He commissioned uh, some medical paintings, and this is the first one. And so Tanaduk is essentially the pure land of the medicine Buddha. And by pure land, what a pure land is that a bodhisattva or a Buddha by their aspiration in their gigantic accumulation of merit can create perfect places. And there's many, many different pure lands, maybe as many pure lands as there are bodhisattvas. It says there's as many pure lands as there are sands in the Ganges. But this particular pure land is related to the medicine Buddha and is related to medicine. And it exists multi-dimensionally, we could say, or in that there is the ultimate pure land of the medicine Buddha that's pictured here that exists. It is said on the peak of Mount Meru. And then there is the outer Pure Land, which it was said to be in India, which we'll talk about. And then there's also the inner Pure Land and the secret Pure Land. It is said that the Pure Land of the Medicine Buddha was the perfect place for the propagation of medicine because it had five perfections. There were, you know, five things that have causes and conditions that exist there that make it the perfect place. And so the first one, the first perfection is that it exists in the perfect time. And so in the Tantra, it says in that moment and at that time. So we can think of in this moment at this time. So this is the perfect time for studying medicine. And so in the Tantra, it was also referring to this time in history when illness and suffering are propagating and occurring. So that's the perfect time for the study of medicine. The second perfection of Tanaduk is that it is the perfect place. And so I will read, there's a couple of different traditions of how the medicine, how Tanaduk came into being and what the nature of the medicine Buddha is. And so, in one sutra called the Sutra of the Golden Light, it talks about how the Buddha himself manifested as the medicine Buddha and manifested Tanaduk, and it was said to have occurred in this way. In the land of Sri Odayana, in the midst of the medicine forest known as the abode of rishis, on the summit of a four-sided mountain, 8 leagues long and 3 leagues high, our teacher manifested a place as smooth as one's palm, free of all obstructions, such as stones and gravel, a wide open area glowing with light, and light rays blurring the distinction between day and night, soft and springy to the touch, and pervaded by the sweet smell of incense. In its midst was the city of Sudarsana, boasting a palace built entirely from the precious stones of the human realm, gold, silver, white, and red pearls in beryl, and from the five precious wish-fulfilling jewels. The palace has 4 sides and 4 doors, and its ornamented walls are 5 layers thick. At each door stands one of the great king guardians. The palace's decorations include various medicinal jewels adorning parts of the palace. 5 types of celestial jewels adorn the parapets, forming a crisscross pattern of garlands and half garlands. 5 types of bodhisattva jewels adorn the tops of the victory standards on the roof and the gata. The gata is the stairs. At all times, these jewels glow and radiate light, and they have the power to explain the inner meaning of external signs and the outer meaning of inner signs. And so that's the traditional description of the medicine Buddha's palace, that the very walls themselves actually speak are giving teachings. And so it is said that Essentially, the city of Sudarsana is a palace of gems with the 14 qualities and five precious substances: gold, silver, white and red pearls, and beryl. They cure all diseases of the four napas and pacify the 404 types of disease in the 1080 obstacle makers. The Medicine Buddha is surrounded by four types of students and by 12 yaksha generals, emanations of the 12 bodhisattvas and the 12 animals of the zodiac. So this is kind of the inner picture that we see here. This is the Medicine Buddha's palace. And the Medicine Buddha is sitting on his throne in the center, and surrounding him are the four groups of students. These are the perfect students that we'll go over. So here we have a little diagram of the Medicine Buddha's palace. And so the Medicine Buddha's pure land is sort of like in a bowl surrounded by four mountains, mountain in the north, the south, the east, and the west. And the different medicines that grow in the different directions are basically referring to hot and cold in the north and south, or cold in the north, hot in the south. And then in the east grow the marrow, and in the west grow the special herbs and the minerals and waters. And in the center are the four groups of students that are listening to the Medicine Buddha give his sermon on the teaching. And those groups of students are the deities, the rishis or sages, the non-Buddhist students, and the Buddhist students. And we'll go over who they are. Tanaduk exists in multi-dimensional space. In other words, there's the spiritual Tanaduk, which is being described in the sutra that the Buddha is manifesting. But these names are also referring to actual places in India at the time of the Buddha's birth that were known for their medicines and medicinal qualities. And so, go ahead to the next slide. So here we have a map of India. This is a geographical map. And it was said, that if we look at uh, where the what's called the Vajrasana, or the seat of the Buddha, was in Bodh Gaya. And so Bodh Gaya is right where my little X is. And so to the south of Bodh Gaya is what's called the Vindhya Range. So that this is called the Southern Mountain. In the north was the Himalayas, or Himalaya, which is mentioned. And then to the east is Gandhamardana, which is uh, a giant hill that's right here. And then in the west was called the Mountain of Malaya, which was the top of the Ghats range, which is actually kind of more down here. So the map is sort of turned this way, but um, we can see that it's sort of referring to places that actually exist. And so we can say that this is the outer dimension of the Medicine Buddha. And so in the north, we have the Himalayas. This is the word Himalaya literally means abode of snow, and that's the Tibetan plateau. The Tibetan plateau is a biodiversity hotspot that has over 35,000 medicinal plants, especially in these countries, like these areas that are here, like Bhutan, Sikkim, areas like Pamako, and especially Nepal. These are endemic pockets of medicinal plants. And so even in ancient times, this was known as a place where medicines came from. In the south, we have the Vindhya range. Vindhya means to obstruct. And so this was considered in the time of the Buddha, this was sort of the boundary of civilized India. Everything below this, which is most of India, was sort of, they didn't, there were huge ranges of forest above the Dhaka plains. And so this was kind of all unknown in the Buddha's time. And so they said it's like a land of cannibals and savages and stuff like that. So the Vindhya means like the obstruct, the southern boundary of what's called the Aryavata, or the land of the Aryas in the Buddha's time. In Tibetan, the word is Bikje. Bikje means piercing, and it refers to the piercing nature of heat. But in the modern Vindhya range, there's over 600 medicinal plants are found in that range. To the east, in the province of Orisha, is the hill called Gandhamardana. And this area is famous in both Hindu mythology and in Buddhist mythology because in the Mahabharata, this is said to be the home of Drona, who was the martial arts teacher. And this was also the home of Nargajuna. Nargajuna's monastery was in Gandhamardana. And so this area is also very famous for Ayurvedic medicine, even today. This is where a lot of Ayurvedic retreats and hospitals, and there's over 500 rare medicinal plants in that area. And then in the west is called Malaya. Malaya is an area that is in the northern part of the Ghats range. Ghats means steppes, and so in India there's the Eastern Ghats and the Western Ghats, and so that was seen as like steppes, with India being in the middle, the plain, the Dhaka plain. And so Malaya is sort of kind of a mythical mountain. It's said that King Manu's boat, that's where it landed after the Great Flood, was on top of Mount Malaya. And so just like Noah, they also have the um, flood story. And so the great King Manu basically collected all the rishis and sages and saved them from a flood in his boat. And then he landed on King Malaya. In the Tantra, there's in more southern India, there's a mountain called Agasthyamala, which means medicine maker hill, and is said to be the place where Avalokiteshvara is from. Like that's the pure land of Avalokiteshvara in the Indian tradition. And this area is another biodiversity hotspot that has over 2,000 medicines, including 325 in endangered medicines. And so we can see that in the that Tanaduk is kind of referring to many things at once, and it's a teaching tool, you know. Essentially, it's like a guidebook. So to the north, in the top, these are the cold plants, cold medicines that treat hot diseases. In the south, there's hot medicines that treat cold diseases. In the east are all the marrow-balans, which are, we're going to go over all of these herbs. Are all the marrow-balans very special plants that are sacred and are considered like a panacea. And then in the West are what are called were the six special herbs, or the six good substances, and then so there were the six good substances of the internal organs and the six good substances of the external organs. So there's 12 plants total. And then there are medicinal waters, special minerals, and medicinal baths. And in the top of the picture right here, you can see the people swimming in the medicinal bath. So Tanaduk is a little bit like a spa. It has all the stuff you need for your spa. Tanaduk also has an inner dimension, and the inner dimension of Tanaduk is ourselves, wherever we are. You know, we are, in one sense, we are the Vaidurya Buddha of our own dimension, right? And so our environment, you know, if we perceive it in a with pure perception, then that is where we are is our medicine Buddha. So wherever we are is our Tanaduk. In the same way that when the Buddha was teaching, when he had when he was presenting his pure perception, Tanaduk manifested, but it also referred to actual location in India. See, so they're both Tanaduk. And then there is the secret dimension of Tanaduk, and the secret dimension are our own body, our own chakras. So it's said that the great bliss chakra, that's this one at the top, is the city of Tanaduk or the palace, and that your mind is the Baiduria light. So Baiduria is sometimes called blue beryl or aquamarine, and it's the color that we see of the medicine Buddha. And it's said that sometimes we translate this as lapis, but aquamarine is a very special stone in that it's kind of a blue, but that you can see through it like glass. And so it's like the color of the sky. And so the medicine Buddha is like the color of the sky of a clear, cloudless sky, that color blue. And the special quality of that color is that it can penetrate everything in the same way that the sky penetrates everything in like space. And so the medicine Buddha's healing energy penetrates everywhere, like this the sky and space. And so our mind, according to the Tantra, is that Baiduria light. And then the four chakras, they say the throat chakra, the enjoyment chakra is Malaya, the mountain of Malaya, the western mountain. The Dharma chakra is Pongeden, or the eastern mountain. The navel chakra, where heat, is Bikje, or the penetrating mountain. And the bliss sustaining chakra in our secret place is Gangchen. And so our own body is also the medicine pure lands. There's a quote that comes from Yuthok talking about how when Yuthok had his vision of when he was writing the Four Tantras, he had a vision that was given to him by a healing Dakini. And so it says, in Vajrasana, that's Bodh Gaya, in India, a girl holding a mirror and carrying a medicine bag on her shoulder addressed him. Great scholar Yuthok, if you wish to go to the medicine city of Sudarsana, single-pointedly pray to the medicine guru in the Vidyahara lineage. He did this, and there in Sudarsana he saw the Buddha, the king of medicine, as well as the palace, the surrounding environment, all the features of the city of Sudarsana. There he met Jivaka Kumara, that was the Buddha's doctor, and his ancestors. The medicine Buddha addressed him. The medicine city of Sudarsana has outer, inner, and secret locations. The outer Sudarsana is in the land of India, in the western land of Udayana, in Akanashta on the summit of Meru and elsewhere. It will be seen by the fortunate who pray to the supreme emanation dwelling there. The inner Sudarsana is wherever one dwells, with oneself as the Vaidurya. Secret Sudarsana is found within one's body, as the great bliss chakra at the crown. See your mind as beryl light. See the enjoyment chakra at your throat as Malaya. See the Dharma chakra at your heart as Gandhamadana. See the emanation chakra at the navel as Vinya, and see the nourishing bliss chakra at this secret area as Himavat. Go to these four mountains, see the qualities of these places of medicine. Take the essence of the instructions from India and light the lamp of medicine in the center of Tibet, so that you may care for many people of Tibet. You will live for 125 years. Then, without doubt, you will come to Sudarsana as the lord of the Dhaka Vidyahara warriors. In the upper left corner, there is the gods, and they're led by Indra and the Amrita goddess. And this they're called their system of medicine is called the Soje Bumpa, the healing vase medical system practiced in the heavens. And so the gods basically heal by just nectar. They just produce and take nectar. And then the non-Buddhists, These are called the Wangchuk Nakpo Luk, or the Black Shiva system of the Siddhas. This is what's called Siddha medicine. And basically, this is referring to, we even today, Siddha medicine exists in South India, but in this time, it's referring primarily to alchemy, or the preparation of and transmutation of minerals and things like that. And so these are the alchemists. And then in the upper right here are what are called the Drongsong, or the rishis. And they're called the Drongsong Giluk, the medicine of the eight branches. So this is talking about Ayurvedic medicine. It says the medicine of the eight branches of the Charakaksimhita, which is the text of Ayurveda. And then there's the Buddhist medicine. This is called the Riksum Gompoluk, the three Bodhisattva medical system. And so in this corner are Avalokiteshvara, um, Vajrapani, and Manjushri. And interestingly, it talks about how these bodhisattvas, they, according to the teaching, the three main systems of medicine that were known at the time were introduced to the world by these three bodhisattvas as emanations. And so there was Avalokiteshvara represented or introduced the teachings of medicine to India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Tibet. And so that's kind of like the Indo-Tibetan tradition of medicine. And then Vajrapani introduced medicine to Odayana and Persia and the Silk Route, and he's representing the Unani medicine, or the Galenic medicine, the Greek tradition of medicine. And then Manjushri, whose sacred place is Wu Taishan in China, he introduced Chinese medicine. And according to the story, he manifested as a parrot and started teaching Chinese medicine. But so these represent the three kind of accepted traditions of medicine at the time. And both King Trisong Detsun and King Songtsen both had three doctors in their court. And usually, one was a Ayurvedic or Indian doctor, one was a Galenic doctor or Greek medicine doctor, and one was a Chinese medicine doctor. And so Tibetan medicine is a mixture of all of these things. And so it's said that the Medicine Buddha is teaching, and each one of these groups is hearing in their own way, in their own language. I love this part because it really, no tradition is left out. All the medicine that existed in that time is there, and they're all receiving it. So any medical teaching, that's why in our Yuthok prayer it says all systems of medicine, any medical teaching, anything that benefits people is being spoken by the Medicine Buddha to all the groups of students. And so in our world, the perfect student is all of us, all of you. Anyone, it says, anyone who wishes to straighten out body, speech, and mind of self and balance the unbalanced nature of others is the perfect student. And so those are the students. And so we have inner medicine Buddhas and outer medicine Buddhas. So then we get to the third perfection is the medicine Buddha himself. The medicine Buddha is called Baidurya Okigalpo, or the medicine guru king of lapis lazuli light, or beryl light. And so the different traditions see the medicine Buddha as different, having manifested in different ways. And so in some texts, it says that the medicine Buddha is the emanation of the historical Buddha when he was giving teachings about medicine. He manifested as this medicine Buddha. And others say that he was a manifestation of the five Buddhas altogether manifested as the medicine Buddha. And then other teachings say that he's a bodhisattva, and that the medicine Tanaduk was manifested by his aspirations. He made 12 great vows, and the huge merit that was gained by these vows manifested the medicine Pure Lands. And so I think all of those things. I'll read one more quote about why the medicine Buddha, it says why the medicine Buddha looks like he does. It says, at the time of the perfect enlightenment, the guardians of the world held aloft four bowls from the four directions and offered them to the Sagata, by whose powers they became a single bowl. These supreme celestial bowls, holding supreme ambrosia-like medicine, sit in the hands of the teacher. By the power of these words of truth, may all medicine become ambrosia. Likewise, the goddess Hari held aloft the celestial and wonderful marrow balance and offered it to the teacher. The supreme ambrosia-like medicine now sits in the hands of the teacher. By the power of these words of truth, may the sick be cured of their illness, may all faults be driven out, and may all medicine become ambrosia. And so that's how he got his implements of the medicine bowl and the marrow balance. And so that is Tanaduk in a nutshell. And so now I wanted to, now in the second part of our talk, we're going to go over in a more practical way the plants. Okay. And so these are very common plants that are used in Tibetan medicine. And this isn't all the plants, of course. There's maybe 10,000 different herbs that we use in Tibetan medicine, but these plants in are mentioned in the Pure Land because these are sort of like the archetypical medicines that really typify hot and cold nature and marrow balance as being a panacea. And so it's sort of like a teaching guide. And so we'll go over each of these quickly. And so the first mountain is the southern mountain, Riro Bikje. So this is Bikje means piercing. And so these are all warm-natured plants that all have the thing that they have in common is that they're all pungent, sour taste, salty, with sharp and hot properties that alleviate the becken or phlegm and the lung. A lot of these plants have to do with our digestive system, which is often affected by cold. And so we'll start on the left side here. So this is cedru. This is a pomegranate. And so we're all kind of very familiar with pomegranates. This is a beautiful picture showing. And so in Tibetan medicine, primarily we're using the seeds of the pomegranate. The peel of the pomegranate is also a medicine, but it has a very different use. So pomegranate seed treats all kinds of cold stomach and improves the digestive fire and cures becken. Pomegranate is native to Iran originally, especially northeastern Iran, and it's a very sacred fruit to Iranian people in particular, but it's spread across most of Mesopotamia from China all the way to Rome 2,000 years ago. So this plant was a very early trade item. And interestingly, in almost every culture, it represents the same thing in that it's basically represents fertility and is used in marriage rituals. And so that pomegranate is in very good medicine. And so this medicine can be used by itself in the form of you can either eat pomegranate seeds. You can eat both the fruit and the seed. Usually we dry it. And also just drinking a little bit of pomegranate juice, especially natural pomegranate juice. If you buy it, you have to make sure that it's not been full of sugar. But natural pomegranate juice in the morning is very good for your starting your digestion before you eat. The next medicine, this is black pepper, Nalashem. This is the kind of pepper that you put in your pepper shakers, but this hasn't been processed yet in this picture. So this is what it looks like when it's on the actual plant. And so these have to be picked and then they're dried. Um, in Tibetan medicine, this warms the stomach and promotes digestion and clears cold. Originally, it was native to Southeast Asia and India. Um, this was a very important trade item, even in 2000 BC. They actually found peppercorns in the nostrils of the Ramses II, the mummy. And so it showed that people have been trading pepper for thousands of years. This next one, this is long pepper or pipali. This clears cold and warms the stomach. This is also a chulen, or we could say like a tonification medicine for the kidneys. Just taking small bits of this can promote kidney health by warming the kidneys. Um, it's native, originally, this is native to India, and it was introduced to the Greeks and Romans in the 6th century BC. So this is another important trade medicine. This plant, this is plumbago, or we in Tibetan it's called citraka. This is another very these little corns on the end of here are like little chili peppers. They're incredibly spicy. The common name for this is leadwort. This clears cold and damp, and it's very good for pain. This is native to India. Uh, Before the introduction of chilies, which came from the New World, this was the primary spicy plant that was used in India. This white flower, this is emong in Tibetan, or clematis, which just means a climbing vine. There's many kinds of clematis, almost 300 different species, and including five that are in Tibet alone. This is Clematis montana, which grows in the Himalayas. But it also grows in other places. It's been naturalized to a lot of different places. This warms the spleen and stomach, and this moves blood and eases pain. And we're using the vine of this. This is galanga, which is a type of wild ginger. If you like Thai food, this is the type of ginger that they use in Thai food called dongra. This in Tibetan medicine, this warms the stomach and kidneys and eases pain. The picture is the flower. We actually use the rhizome, which is the root, just like ginger root. It contains a little bit of camphor, so it has a little more camphory taste, and that's why it's more peppery and camphorous than regular ginger. This plant is on the end, Ferula astafoetida. This is the plant. Astafoetida is a relative of fennel. But what we actually make out of this plant is they take this and they take the root and they beat the root and get a resin out of this. And that resin is what they make astafoetida, or in India it's called hing. It's a spice, very, very strong smell. Actually, the word asafoetida literally means like bad smell. It smells like very powerful garlic. In Tibetan medicine, this warms the uterus and moves the blood, stops pain. It also can kill parasites. It's native to Afghanistan, but this was brought to Europe by Alexander the Great. This can be used as a single herb because we use it in cooking, Indian food. If you cook with this, you can get many of the medical benefits. Um, Tastes like garlic. So these plants are all the warming plants. And so the next slide. So here in the northern mountain, which is the cold mountain, Gangchen literally means snowy mountain. These are cold plants that are treating hot diseases. The first one on the left, this is white sandalwood, and sandalwood is a tree. And so this is already been cut down, and this is how it's processed, and this will be cut into either powdered or cut into small sticks, This clears the lung, the wind in the heart, and benefits the heart in general. This is one of the most expensive woods that there is. It was introduced to Europe in the 15th century. It's native to native to India, and this is used in a lot of incense making. I think we're all very familiar with sandalwood. That's your primary when you use incense. That's the main smell. This next plant, this is camphor. This is the Camphor cinnamonica plant. And so when we make camphor, so anytime you have any kind of like lotion or anything you're rubbing on your body, the tingly feeling, it's usually menthol and camphor. And so camphor is a resin that's processed from these leaves. And so what they do is they take these leaves and they sort of boil them in a covered pot, usually made of wood. And so the camphor resin will steam up to the top of the pot. And so then they take that top and then they take out all the resin, and that's how we get camphor. That's the traditional way. Um, a lot of camphor today is synthetic. They make it chemically, and that kind of camphor is a little different. You can't take it inside. So if you're doing any kind of herbal medicine where you're going to be taking something internally, always make sure you're using natural camphor. It clears heat and eases pain. It opens the senses, very strongly. This is called the king of the cold medicines. The word, it comes from, originally, this comes from um, Borneo in Indonesia. Matter of fact, the name camphor means kaparbara. It comes from the word kaparbaras, which is the the kapur tree from Baras. And Baras was a place in Indonesia. So this is the famous eagle wood or agar wood. This is also an extremely expensive wood. Um, we use this a lot. This is a very common medicine, especially in Tibetan medicine. This settles the lung and benefits the heart, very used calming the mind. What we're using or what the medicine part of this is actually the resin. And if we look at this picture, this sort of darker color inside this wood is the resin. And so in Arabic, that's called oud, and it's used in the manufacture of perfumes. This is a very endangered plant these days, and it's very expensive. A kilo of high quality resinous agar is about $100,000. It's mentioned it's spread in from India in in maybe 1400 BC, because this is mentioned in the Bible a couple of times for making incense and perfume. So it's spread in all of the Asia and the Middle East. This is neem, the neem plant, Nimpa. This is kind of popular these days. Cools the blood and heat from the stomach, and it's used externally for inflammation. It's native to India. This is a sacred tree in Hinduism. It's sacred to Vishnu. Sometimes they call this the teeth tree, and that's because they use the bark of this tree in ancient times was used as to brush your teeth with. But so it's called teeth cleaning twig. But also the anti-inflammatory aspect of this plant is good for the gums and stuff. So they pick the right plant. This last plant, this is Swartia chirata, or called ticta. This is a type of gentian. It's also called fellwort. Very, very bitter, bitter plant. This is used to clear heat from the stomach and liver, and it's good for fever. And so we use the root of this plant. This plant is also native to India and in the lower Himalayas, and so um, it's very commonly used in Tibetan and Ayurvedic medicines, but in other systems of medicine, this would be replaced by gentian, which is a very similar plant. Next one. Okay, so these are very important herbs. So now we've moved to the eastern mountain, the fragrant mountain. And this is marrow These are what are called the three marrow. And so we have the cherubic marrow or arua. This is the plant that the medicine Buddha is holding in his hand. This cures Becken and is good for lymph disorders. Promotes life energy, increases the digestive fire. This is known as the king of medicines. It's native to South and Southeast Asia. It was kind of considered a panacea, mostly because this medicine is very good for curing amoebic dysentery, which was a very common disorder in ancient times. And so in that time, it could save your life. It also uh, purifies the blood. So this medicine is ubiquitous in Tibetan medicine. The next one is a related plant. This is called Terminalica balearica or Barura. This cures Becken and lymph disorders. This is also said to restore youth and promote longevity. So it's also kind of a panacea. And these are all three of these plants together are what make up Triphalia or Drebusum. And so this is taken as a Rasayana or a Chulen to promote longevity and health. The third one is this is Embolica officinalis. This is Karura. This cures Tripa disorders and purifies the blood. When the Buddha was passing away, King Ashoka came and gave him a gift and gave him this, Balearic. So it's a very sacred. All three of these plants are both sacred to Buddhism and Hinduism. It said together in combination, Triphalia balances the three humors that clears fever and chronic liver disorders. Um, Good for the skin. This is one of the biggest exports in India are these plants, especially Tribolic myrobalan. Okay, the next one. So now the Western Mountain is a little overpopulated, so there's a lot of plants. So these are called the six good substances, which are kind of some of the most important medicines in Tibetan medicine. So we'll go over them quickly. The first one on the left, this is Myristica fragrans. This is nutmeg. So usually when we get nutmeg in the West, it's either as a powder or sometimes we get the dried kernels. But this is what nutmeg, it actually is the seed of a fruit. The red part here is called mace, and sometimes when they make nutmeg powders and stuff, they actually only use this red part. It smells similar. So this is the nutmeg fruit. This calms the mind and it cures heart disorders. Originally, this was native to one place in the world, the Malacca Islands in Indonesia. And this was the reason the Dutch went to Indonesia was to get this plant. So this was a very important trade item. This was brought to Europe in the 16th century and became like one of the most important spices ever. This next plant, this is clove, common clove, Sergium aromaticum, lychee. This cures the life channel disorders. Life channel is kind of referring to the aorta. Cold wind in the intestines. This also comes from the Malacca Islands. So these two spices were sort of introduced to the world together. Clove was one of the earliest trade items, and it was introduced to the Romans in the first century, all the way from Indonesia. This third one, this is bamboo manna, which is a type of resin that comes from the bamboo plant that's been infected by a parasite. And so the plant protects itself by kind of exudating this. In ancient times, this was called tabashir, and this was very rare and very precious. It cost the same as ivory until they learned how to farm it. And now it's more reasonable and common. So this is the special medicine of the lungs and cures lungs and inflammation. This next plant, this is crocus or saffron. So this is the crocus flower on the left here, and each crocus flower has three stamens and only three. And so when those are plucked, that's what gives us saffron. This is another, this by weight, this is the most expensive spice in the world because there's no machine or anything that can do this. You have to do this by hand. And so in countries like Spain and stuff, they'll get hundreds and hundreds of old ladies to sit there and pick the stamens out of saffron. Originally, it was from Iran in Kashmir area of northern India. Very important medicine. This cures liver diseases, stops bleeding. Usually we replace it with safflower, which is kind of a related flower, but real saffron is very good medicine. And so you can make your own saffron water by taking three or four strands of saffron and putting it in a big thing of water and let that sit overnight and then just drink that water. It's very good for your liver. The next plant, this is black cardamom. Black cardamom cures cold in the spleen and stomach. It's native to Nepal. This is found in many cuisines because it's very good for the digestion. And so, a lot of Indian cooking, Vietnamese cooking, all over Asia, they use black cardamom as a culinary spice to improve digestion. Next is green cardamom. This is the green cardamom pod. And so we have inside are the little green cardamom seeds that we use for medicine. And so this treats the kidneys. This is the special medicine of the kidneys and treats cold wind disorders. They've been using green cardamom as a medicine since the fourth century. So it's very important medicine. Then we have kind of what are called the six special medicines of the outer organs. The reason there's only five is because pomegranate is in this group too, and we already talked about that. So this first one is called Dukmoyong or telecherry. We're using this. We took the picture of the flowers, but we use the bark of this. Is cures small intestine disorders. Very important medicine for dysentery, diarrhea, infectious diarrhea. This was brought to Europe by the Portuguese and was this is the reason the Portuguese went to India was to get this medicine. Very important medicine for diarrhea. The next one, this is custis root. So custis is a thistle, like a little pokey plant, and we use the root of this plant is called ruta. This is a very important medicine, and custis is used in all systems of traditional medicine. So we use this in Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Unani medicine, and even Western herbal medicine. This cures large intestine disorders such as gastritis. It's good for anything that's not moving, anything that's stuck in the body. We'll use custis root to get the energy moving. So it's a very important medicine. It's good for shoulder and back pain that's caused by high blood pressure, all kinds of things. It was said that the rishis used to eat this root. The root is also mentioned in the Torah. This is that's the sacred book of the Jews, and so it was used to make an incense called ketoret, which was said to be the only incense that God likes. So that's how important ruta is. This is a very precious medicine. This next one, this is the flower. This is hepatospermum. We call this Sergi metok, which means yellow flower, which is interesting because we typically don't use the flower. We use the seed of this plant. This is a native Himalayan plant, bitter melon. This is a type of Himalayan melon. This cures tripa and gallbladder inflammation. This is kind of a difficult medicine to get. It took me forever to be able to get this because it only comes from kind of a very small region of like parts of lower parts of Tibet and Yunnan and like that. It's in only in certain areas. This is medicine on the lower left here. This is sal ammoniac, which is ammonium chloride salt or natural ammonium chloride. Very, very strong smell. Like this is when they do smelling salts. This is what it's made of, and so it'll wake you up. It is an antidote to poisoning. It clears the bladder and urinary tract when taken in internally. This was actually introduced to India from Arab medicine and so this actually came the other way. This was brought to Tibet through India and brought to India from Islamic countries. And it's usually a byproduct of processing plants, very commonly used in alchemy, alchemical processes. And then this last plant is a marsh orchid. This is called Wanglok. So Wangpo Lakpa, which means five. The root of this plant looks like a little hand, like little five fingers. This is a very popular plant because it's a aphrodisiac and a fertility medicine. It increases bodily strength and rejuvenates the body and produces reproductive fluids. It's native to the Himalayas and from Pakistan to southeast Tibet. Because it's an aphrodisiac, it's becoming rarer and rarer, more difficult to get this plant because it's a high altitude orchid. But they started farming this, and so it's getting a little bit easier. And so then we get to the minerals and the baths. And so the main two minerals that are mentioned in Tanaduk are calcite. That's this on the left. Calcite strengthens, they say it strengthens the paternal white components. In other words, the things we get from our father's side. So that's our bones, our spinal cord, our ligaments, our fat, our brain, nervous system, and sperm. Traditionally, there's five types of calcite, mostly based on color. It cures phlegm and chronic stomach acidity. It's also good for fever, and it's also a chulen. Small amounts of this are good to eat for the stomach because it controls the stomach acid. Very common practice in Tibet is that they eat small little bits of calcite. The next one, this is Shilajit. This has kind of become very popular and famous lately. It's a mineral exudate. So organic material, prehistoric organic material gets pushed through rocks and comes out of the stones. And it gathers the minerals as it's exudating, it gathers minerals. So this is the way, very powerful medicine of getting the minerals that you need. And so it's said that this rejuvenates the female aspects of the body that we get from our mother, such as the blood, the liver, the flesh. It regulates the menstruation, that sort of thing. There are traditionally there are five types of calcite, or not calcite, shilajit that are based on the mineral content because this can have gold, silver, copper, iron, lead, those kind of things. It's a very cooling medicine. It cures kidney inflammation. It's used for some skin disorders, and this is also used for inflammation of the stomach, liver, and the blood. And so in Tanaduk, they say there's also five healing waters, the five types of waters. And so what they're referring to here is mineral waters, mineral springs. And so we call this living water or natural water in the sense that the different waters from different natural springs have different healing qualities according to their mineral content. And so the different types of water that are mentioned are according to the flavors. So there's like salty, sweet, bitter, astringent, and pungent. And those are curing different types of diseases. It's a little harder to get natural spring waters, but in the old days, they had more access to these kind of mineral springs. But even today, we have mineral waters and waters that contain like lithium and different small amounts of medicinal components. And then the last thing is hot springs. So there are different 5 types of hot springs. And so in the original picture, it shows the different people and bathing in these different hot springs. And so there are 5 types, and similarly to the water, the 5 types are differentiated according to the mineral content. So there's calcite springs, coal, sulfur, mineral pitch, and relgar. And so bathing in those minerals also have healing properties. And this is something that we also have in the West, especially in Europe. Bathing in mineral springs is a long tradition of medicine. Those are the main medicines that are mentioned in Tanaduk in the text. So now let's go to the last slide. So in our own outer Tanaduks, each of us, Tanaduk is also like Dr. Nida is trying to encourage, and what his program is kind of talking about is we all live in our own Tanaduk. We all live in our own environment, and our medicines are available in their own environment. So, like, interestingly, we talk about ecology. So the word ecology comes from the Greek, and it means the study of our house, our own home. And so when we talk about ecology and we're really talking about the place where we live. And so Dr. Nida has encouraged to sort of create our own Tanaduks. And it doesn't have to be, a gigantic plot of land. It can be anything from having plants in our own house, like house plants, or if we live in an apartment, having a green box, or if we do have land to sort of plant things that are valuable medicinal plants, but also to sort of regenerate our own areas. And so there's 2 aspects. One is for us and one is for the environment. So for our own personal health, getting outside and the big saying now is that we need to touch grass. We need to get off the computers and go outside and get into the environment. And so sort of like what Liz was describing in the beginning, this is good for our health. It lowers our cortisol and lowers our stress to get out there and work with the land and get out into nature. Many people involved in these projects, they ask me, well, what should we grow? What should we farm? That's the question I get asked. And so a lot of medicinal plants have become endangered as our environment is, undergoing environmental degradation. In the United States, about 17% of all plant species are endangered, and about 8% are critically endangered. And so I belong to a organization called United Plant Savers that tries to save and promote the growth of medicinal plants. And so here we have a list of, that's in 3 categories: in review, at risk plants, and then these plants that are critically endangered. And so when people ask me what to grow, I always give them this list. And so this list is kind of particular to America, but in Europe, there's the same idea, although the Europeans have done a little better job in only about 2%, 2.4% of medicinal plants are actually endangered in Europe because they have a little more organization. And so there's similar groups like the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, which is a NGO that promotes the protection of the environment in Europe, and also various EU groups, governmental organizations. But when we're looking at what to grow as a farmer, we don't need to grow these plants because we might need that plant. It's that it improves the entire ecology of the area to restore native plant species because that, of course, will bring back certain pollinators that are specific to those plants and it can restore the entire ecology of an area. And so, for instance, Dr. Nida in Italy and in California has created these Tanaduk gardens, which, he's filling with medicinal plants. And that has, you know, multiple benefits. One is that, you know, we are creating a way for us to get these medicinals in the future, but also it increases the general biodiversity of the area by bringing in pollinators and restores the area. And so um, the three big things that ecologists talk about in preserving medicinal plant species are seed banks. So as we grow these plants, we collect these seeds. And so um, it prevents in case something happens like a gigantic wildfire or something like that in a endemic area, it doesn't destroy an entire species of plants. We always have the seeds. And so seed and then also we can trade seeds between different farms and stuff. And so seed banks. The other thing is botanical gardens where we have, you know, growing these plants. And then most important are botanical sanctuaries, special areas that are set aside to specifically grow endangered medicinal plants. And so those things are super important and so that we have these plants in the future. Um, even on my in uh, this list that I have here, 6 or 7 of these plants are used in Tibetan medicine, and some of them we kind of it would be very difficult to work without them, and so we really need to work on uh, preserving our heritage of medicinal plants. And also, it's just good for you. It's good for your health. It lowers stress to get out there and work with the land and get your hands dirty and not think and know that uh, when you're working in your garden and when you're planting plants, even if it's just a house plant, you're actually doing more than just for yourself. It's restoring the entire ecology of an area. And so now I will take any questions that anybody has.
Fernanda is asking, can you remind me how to use bamboo silica?
Okay, so bamboo silica, when you get it, it will come as it looks like like stones, and so but it's very soft. And so you can crush that into a powder, and that's how we generally use it. And if you're using it as a single medicine, you can just crush it into a soft powder and take that with hot water. It's very good for your lungs, and it doesn't have a bad taste. It actually has kind of a sweet taste. But basically, we crush it into a powder.
And do we purchase it already crushed or?
It can be. I like to get it as kind of in its naturally it'll be either little stones and they're either white or they can be kind of off-white bluish color. They're both good. And it looks like a stone, but it's actually kind of soft. So you can just put it in a mortar and pestle and crush it up, or you can put it in a grinder as well.
And then Anna Christina is asking, do you have any resources for buying seeds?
There are many seed banks, and it depends on what you want to grow. So usually there'll be specialized seed banks. Like if you, for instance, want to grow orchids, there'll be different places online that have orchid seeds. But one of the best places for medicinal plants in the United States is called Mountain Gardens. You can go to their website. They have a seed bank. That's a very interesting place. It was developed by a man named Joe Hollis, who was a farmer and herbalist, and he bought some land back in the early, I'll say late 60s, and just started growing medicinal plants. And by the end of his life, he had one of the largest seed banks in North America. So he just passed away, but his garden is still going, and so you can get a lot of seeds from him. They're usually seasonal. You know, you get different things at different times of the year, depending on when they're. Um, I think they'll ship internationally. It's kind of hard internationally because governments don't like non-native plants being shipped into other countries because it can destroy the agricultural business of the whole country. So, and I encourage people to kind of think bioregionally. In other words, we don't need to grow weird esoteric things. We need to replace kind of like our native plants that are missing, right? And so then we don't have to worry about whether we're introducing non-native and toxic plants into our environment. Just, I think I encourage people to just kind of do research of your own area and see what has been damaged, what is going extinct, especially medicinal plants. You can make a huge difference, just growing what's local to you.
Mountain rose herbs, right?
Yep. Rose, or no, not Mountain Rose Herbs, Mountain
Oh,
Garden. Mountain Rose is a very good company, though. You can leave that up. That's a good company to get herbs. Let me see. Yeah, it's mountaingardensherbs.com. But there are many, many seed banks. The best thing is to kind of decide what kind of plant you want to grow first. Then you go online and you see who's selling it. If you get serious into gardening, you can also get bulbs or small starts, live plants, and they'll send you the starts as well. Mountain Gardens does that as well, and that they have a much better survival rate. Growing things from seeds is that's an art because sometimes you have to scar them and there's different processes where growing things from starts is usually pretty effective. But we have a lot of good at Pure Land Farms and in Europe now. I think we have a lot of good farmers, a lot of good gardeners, a lot of people that are interested. And so I think it really has the potential to make a difference in the environment and ecology of these areas.
I remember when we were having our herbal intensives for Sowa Rigpa Institute years ago with Ed, everyone went crazy for all the aphrodisiac herbs. And I remember the Wanglok that you were talking about for the Western Mountain, which is known for giving women radiance and beauty and fertility. One of our Sorikpa colleagues was taking that. I'm not going to call her out, but after a few months, she came back married and pregnant.
There you Yeah, no, it works, and that's why it's endangered, is that it really works, and it's one of the most common herbs I'm asked for. So it really shows sometimes I get an insight into what's going on in the world by what medicines I'm getting requested to make. But Wanglok is a very uh, important medicine. It's a rare medicine. I'd like, if somebody's interested in what to grow, growing marsh orchids. Is very good hobby to get into. And so what we're using is the root of those orchids, and they're like I said, it looks like a little hand. That's why it's called Indra's hand. Beautiful garden plant as well. And uh, they they will grow in places similar to sort of like the Himalayas. So if you grow, if you're in kind of Alps regions of Europe or in sort of in the United States, like Wisconsin or Maine or something like that, I think they would grow. So it's a challenge. I challenge somebody to grow it.
Andreas asked how to use long pepper and green cardamom. What are the nuances since they are both good for the kidney?
So those are very safe and useful herbs that are both used culinarily, and you can actually use them together. those are two primary herbs that are used in like chai spices. If you like Indian tea, chai. And so you could actually use them together. You can grind it up in a small powder and just add that to milk, warm milk. Long pepper, green cardamom, a little black cardamom, black pepper. All those things are delicious together in hot milk, and that's how you can make chai, or you can add it to black tea as well. And those are all very good for your digestion, especially if you have kind of sluggish digestion that's sort of made worse, kind of what we call like a cold stomach, where you have difficulty digesting food. All or any of those are very useful.
Anna Christina is asking, with climate change, do we need to focus on certain medicinal plants?
Oh, that's a big question. Climate change is sort of affecting what can grow at certain times in certain places because it's affecting how plants are seeding. And so certain because it's related to the climate, to certain temperatures. And so, yeah, it's a big question. Like I said, I focus on the things, what I would look for is like the list that I provided, and then your local list of things that are endangered or getting rare and focus on those. And growing them from seeds and starts is very helpful because climate change is actually preventing some of these plants from growing naturally because of the difficulty in seeding, right? The plants aren't seeding properly because of the differences in temperature. But then on the good side, because of the increase of, the nitrogen and content, some things are now growing in places where they wouldn't grow. So we can use both of those things to, you know, typically what we do when we're gardening is we need to find out which climatic zone we're in, right? And so there's these different global zones, and different plants will grow in those climatic zones. And so you have to kind of figure out which zone you're in and then which plants grow there and grow them. But yes, climate change is a big problem. But, every little plant you plant, you're doing your part. It's giving you a little tiny bit of oxygen, taking a little bit of carbon out of the atmosphere.
Marcia is asking, does Shilajit impact estrogen levels and estrogen toxicity?
Mostly what Shilajit is ferric oxide. So it's iron, like natural bioavailable iron. And so it typically doesn't strongly affect your estrogen or hormone levels. It is very nutrifying to the blood because it can increase the iron levels in the blood. And so Shilajit is very good for people that are a little bit anemic, but it contains, like, not all Shilajit is the same. That's kind of Shilajit is like wine. Every bit is a little different depending on which minerals were in the soil or uh, in the organic matter that created the shilajit, right? And so different shilajit can have slightly different effects depending upon its mineral content and depending on what the patient needs in general. In general, we say it's very nutrient and tonifying to the blood and to the energy levels. In general, you want to take very small amounts of Shilajit. You don't need to take giant amounts. It's better to just take a very small amount for a certain amount of time so that you don't have any mineral toxicities or anything like that.
Venus from Latvia is asking about sea vegetables. He's asking for what are they good for, and can they be placed on different sides of the Tanaduk or all in one direction?
I like that question. So, sea vegetables in general, we do use, especially in Chinese medicine, we use all kinds of what are kombu, humbu, different types of seaweed. And primarily what we're using them for is their iodine content. They have very high levels of iodine. And so we use them for thyroid and for goiters and for iodine deficient conditions. The other thing that sea vegetables are good for is, in general, in traditional medicine, we say the quality of saltiness is good for resolving masses. So, uh, non-malignant tumors and hardnesses in the body. Sometimes we use sea vegetables to soften those. As far as Tanaduk, first, Tanaduk is funny because Tibetans never really saw the ocean, so it doesn't, where it is. I would say I would put them in the western part because that's where the salts and the minerals are, and that's primarily where what we're using sea vegetables for is for their mineral and salt content. And so I think they're in the western side of Tanaduk. You just have to keep going until you get to the ocean, and that's where they are.
Well, if anyone would like to get in touch with Ed, I've included his contact information and a link to his Jade Lotus clinic in Florida. And oh gosh, thank you so much, Ed. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. We are so fortunate to have Ed because, he's like a walking resource of herbs and natural medicine. And, obviously this was a huge download. It was very, curated, but it was still a big download. It's impossible to get all these herbs and work with them all at once. So for the future, we can start kind of choosing directions and areas of focus to, yeah, to really study and dive a little deeper into. Please keep in touch through our mailing list for news and upcoming offerings. We want to continue periodically offering more resources and inspiration for a Tanaduk to take place in your own life on a outer, inner, and secret level. And we are still fundraising for the Tanaduk and other projects at Yuthok Arche, Dr. Nida's new center. Dr. Nida joined this talk for a few minutes, but he's also teaching a full program at in Czech Republic. So I think he didn't want to interrupt, and then I think he had to go.
He wanted to make sure I was here.
Yeah, he wanted to make sure we were all paying attention. And yeah, do you have any closing comments, Ed? Anything
Uh,
else?
I would just say that, yeah, when I was preparing, I didn't know what was too much or too little. And so this is just sort of an introduction. And like Liz said, we can, if you're interested, we can kind of do more specific, we can focus. Any one of those herbs could be a 2-hour talk, especially when you're getting into the uses, the history, and then you add in how to grow, where they grow. Every plant a is a being just like we're a being, and so there's a big story there, like a lot going on. And then I would say, I think Dr. Nita's point is to make Tanaduk relevant to our life. It's not, Tanaduk isn't some place that's far away or it exists in this world, and it exists in ourselves, and it is also something that we are producing that we can make. And so, and it doesn't have to be, you don't need 60 acres. You can do it in your house. When you plant a plant, it's bringing you a little, you're exchanging, you're helping it live, and it's helping you with a little bit of joy and a little bit of oxygen, a little trace amount. And so, when we put ourselves in relationship with our environment, we're that alone is a healing, because that is part of why we have illness, is because we have separated ourselves from our environment. And so, um, I think that's important, and it has, you know, gardening and working with plants and, you know, getting back in touch with ourselves that way is healing in itself. And then the next step is using these plants and using these medicines for ourselves and then for our family and then for our community and then all the way up to being a professional herbalist and healer. It starts with having a felt sense that nature is alive, that this world is alive, and everything is interacting with us, and we are not aliens that came from somewhere else. We came out of this earth in the same way that a daisy grows. And so we uh, we need to get in touch with that and to recognize our interconnectedness with it. And then you will realize, you know, uh, Tanaduk. You'll realize, what's beautiful to behold. So that's that.
Those are some beautiful thoughts to end on. Thank you so much, Ed. And thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope this was beneficial and wish you all health and wellness.